to do.
Have a great day, everyone.
It's Tuesday, November 15th, and you're supposed to be safer when you get back on campus. We start here. A student is arrested after the murder of 3 teammates.
I couldn't really tell who the shooter was and who was just trying to get away from the bus.
Our team is at the University of Virginia, where students are reeling from a mass shooting. The graduates who were supposed to have their student debt wiped out might be back in the red again.
And essentially made the pause on this program more permanent.
Why President Biden's student loan plan might take a semester off. And he was disciplined for alleged harassment, so why would his accuser get the same punishment?
They're going to come after me for everything they can because I've made enough noise.
New allegations about the organization that's supposed to keep sports safe. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brad Milkey. Charlottesville is one of the more picturesque cities in Virginia. Brick buildings, tree-lined streets. The university there, the University of Virginia, was founded by Thomas Jefferson. Of course, in recent years, the city has also been associated with violence. When white supremacists descended on the city in 2017, violent clashes ensued, culminating in the murder of a young woman.
Okay, someone with some cars just ran over a whole bunch of protesters. A lot of people got hit. A lot of people got hit.
Point being, anyone who attends the school at this point has felt this shadow of violence kind of looming over campus. Well, late on Sunday night, we got reports there had been a shooting there.
The University of Virginia has been on lockdown all night as police try to track down a shooting suspect they say is armed and dangerous.
We soon learned multiple students had been killed. Yesterday, we learned their names and got word that the gunman has been arrested. ABC's Faith Abube is in Charlottesville, Virginia this morning. And Faith, this shooting didn't take place in a campus building. It didn't take place in a dorm. This was like a mass shooting on a bus, right?
Right, Brad. This is so heartbreaking in so many ways. You know, the bus had just brought the students back from a field trip. They were in Washington, D.C. to see a play. It was part of the university class. At this time, it's really unclear whether the suspect was part of the class or how he got on the bus. But what we do know is at some point, once the bus got back to campus, the victims were shot in the bus.
One person's at the UVA box office. Lay down. And one person's at the Colbert garage, shot in the chest. Another woman shot, where you shot at? In her leg.
We were able to see that bus being towed from campus yesterday afternoon, and you could see some of the bullet holes coming out of the window where some of the victims, at least, would have been sitting when the suspect allegedly shot them.
This is an unimaginably sad day for our community. The entire university community is grieving this morning.
Now you have 3 victims who have died, all of them part of the University of Virginia's football team. You have 2 other students who were injured in that shooting. One of them is in critical condition. The other one, we were told that he's doing well. But, you know, the entire campus is trying to figure out how to wrap their heads around it.
How are you making sense of all of this as we're learning new details about this?
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of numb.
We talked to a lot of students here in the last 24 hours who heard gunshots.
I heard like 2 distinct shots. I'm pretty confident they were gunshots, just like on this road right here, like by one of the sorority houses.
I couldn't really tell who the shooter was and who was just trying to get away from the bus, but a couple minutes later, you know, they started locking down. Police responded really quickly.
Some of them who looked out their windows and saw, according to them, the bus driver trying to get the rest of the students off the bus and to safety.
I just want to say there was 3 young, great men.
A lot of them are quite emotional. Some of them had to sleep in the library because that's where they were when the shooting happened. And the university asked them to shelter in place, so they had to stay wherever they were.
We were all inside for 12 hours plus. Yeah, it was really scary watching things unfold.
And if you drive around campus, around where all the fright houses are, you can see some of them have put up banners saying Charlottesville strong. And some of them even have the numbers of the victims written on them because, of course, these victims were part of the football team.
Yeah, and those young men, Devin Chandler, Deshaun Perry, and Lavelle Davis Jr. photos you see of them are the same photos that pop up on TV when UVA plays football. And then you've got the photo of the suspect, which is a similar photo. He was also on the football team at some point. What do we know about the suspected gunman and any potential motives here?
Yeah, so apparently, according to the university's athletics department website, he was part of the football team back in 2018, but he never actually played in any games. We're not sure why. But at this moment, he was not part of the football team when the shooting happened. But he is a student here at UVA.
We've charged him with 3 counts of second-degree murder, and we charged him with 3 counts of using a handgun in the commission of a felony.
They're trying to figure out exactly what happened, whether or not he had any relationships with any of the victims. At this point, police can't tell us that. But we do know that authorities have had several encounters with him in the past. Apparently, just this fall, he came to the attention of the UVA threat assessment team.
They received information that Mr. Jones had made a comment about possessing a gun to a person that was unaffiliated with the university. In other words, a third party. That reporting person, again, unaffiliated with the university, to the best of our knowledge, never saw a gun.
There was another incident, an alleged hazing incident. The circumstances were still unclear at this point, but we were told that the threat assessment team did close that investigation because they couldn't get any kind of cooperation. We're not sure whether he was a victim in that situation or whether he was being investigated.
But through the course of the threat assessment team's investigation, we learned of a prior criminal incident involving a concealed weapon violation that occurred outside the city of Charlottesville in February of 2021.
And Brad, as you can imagine, a lot of people have a lot of questions for police, for authorities, for university officials here about what happened and perhaps if anything could have been prevented. For the university's part, they're saying the search for the suspect may be over, but they are talking about how the work to try to understand this terrible crime and what may have motivated the suspect to commit this crime is just beginning.
Yeah, and like you said, the student body there just absolutely shattered by this. No classes or anything happening on campus yesterday. We'll see what happens as the week goes on. Faith Abube there at UVA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad.
Next up on Start Here, time to redo the math on your student loans again. We're back in a bit.
It's lunchtime in America. So, what are we serving up?
Well, how about everything you need to know?
You got me feeling like your health, your money,
breaking news, exclusives,
pop culture, and with the biggest stars.
Music, trends, style,
and some laughs. And some good food.
You got me feeling like...
You know, that sounds pretty good.
GMA 3, what you need to know. A third hour of GMA in the afternoon.
So join us, afternoons, for everything you need to know.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi!
Is this mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasured that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby.
It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
From America's #1 news comes the all-new ABC News app. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
It was seen as a major play by President Biden to sway younger voters ahead of the midterms, to encourage families across the country.
If you earn less than $125,000 a year, you'll get up to $10,000 knocked off your student debt.
When the White House announced students would have $10,000, even $20,000 wiped off their student debt balance sheets earlier this year, students described it as a life-changing moment.
I was telling my coworkers, like, hey, look at this. I'm like free of debt. I'm free of debt.
Websites were set up to facilitate relief applications. College graduates were racing to get in touch with their lenders. Well, just days after the midterms, all of that came to a crashing halt.
For the second time in a week, a court has blocked the Biden administration's plan to forgive student loan debt.
Not because the Biden administration wanted it to, they're currently full steam ahead, but because a federal judge declared this plan from the Education Department was illegal. Yesterday, the court above that judge, the Eighth Circuit Court, ruled the program will be stopped for now while this all gets sorted out. ABC's Cheyenne Hazlitt is here. She covers federal agencies. And Cheyenne, if I got a student loan and I was planning on getting that debt forgiven, I was going to sign on to the federal website today. Would that website just be dark? What happened here?
Yeah, Brad, this program is going through it. So last week, at the end of the week, a judge in Texas blocked the whole program and the website went down. The Department of Education no longer is allowing people to apply to get their loans relieved. And then yesterday, another lawsuit came down, this time in the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. And this one had already paused part of the program a few weeks back, but yesterday cinched the loss for the Biden administration and essentially made the pause on this program more permanent. So you can't apply at the moment. There are 26 million people who have already applied. The Biden administration says that they are still reviewing those applications, that at least 16 million of them are ready for debt relief as soon as it's legally possible. But no, can't apply at the moment.
What is the rationale from these federal judges? Why can't it go on for now?
So both cases, one in Texas and one in the Eighth Circuit, had different arguments on behalf of the plaintiffs, but both, in a general sense, argue that the Biden administration has gone beyond their legal authority in relieving this much debt.
With student debt, by the way, they're suing me, trying to block relief. No, I'm not a joke. Who the hell do they think they are?
In the Eighth Circuit, the decision yesterday, there were 3 judges who ruled on that case. It was a panel of them. 2 were appointed by former President Donald Trump, 1 by George W. Bush. In Texas, the judge was also appointed by Donald Trump. So safe to say these losses are coming from conservative-leaning courts.
The same MAGA Republicans who took hundreds of thousands of dollars and even millions of dollars in the pandemic relief loans had their loans forgiven, are trying now to block student loans.
In the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, they decided that Mohila, a loan servicer tied to the state of Missouri, was probably going to lose money from these cancellations. And so that means that the case has standing. There's harm. And they think it deserves to play out in a fuller hearing in February.
Did y'all co-sign for someone's loan? And then, I don't know if you just saw the judge and said that's not constitutional.
That's a big deal because that's what conservatives have been up against in bringing these lawsuits. Basically, they've been hard-pressed to find a court that thinks Biden canceling student loans will actually cause harm to someone or something.
Oh, who is it hurting? Here, it's hurting a company.
Yeah, it seems to be helping a lot of people. Who can you really say it's hurting? Not anymore. Now you have 2 separate courts that have ruled that they do think that someone is getting hurt, someone or something.
And just to be clear then, Cheyenne, so they're not saying this is never going to happen. They're basically saying we need to wait for this to play out in February. And so I guess I'm wondering, what happens next for this program?
Yeah, exactly. The court ruled there's enough harm being incurred here that they want to hear the case out in full. As for what happens next, well, we still don't totally know. In the Eighth Circuit, there are a few different options. One involves going to the Supreme Court. One involves litigating the case there in the Eighth Circuit in February when hearings are scheduled. We have pressed the White House and the Department of Justice to tell us how they plan to argue this, but we haven't heard back just yet. And then in Texas, the next step is for the Department of Justice to appeal to the Fifth Circuit. But either way, big takeaway is that this legal trouble isn't going away before an impending deadline of January 1st when the moratorium on payments lifts.
Yeah, explain that, because there was this deadline for borrowers to start paying back their student loans again. Because of the pandemic, for a long time you didn't have to, you could, but there was no interest accruing. That was cool. Now the idea is it goes back to normal on January 1st because the relief is coming. But what if the relief doesn't come? What do you do?
Yeah, on January 1st, people have to start paying their loans again. At first, Biden's goal was to have a lot of those loans canceled by them through this program. People were encouraged to apply by mid-November, and then it would all be neatly squared away before the pause on payments lifted. But now there's no guarantee whether those cancellations will come through by the new year. So people will probably need to start paying their loans unless the Biden administration extends that moratorium once again, which is something that advocates are really pushing for. I was speaking to the Student Borrower Protection Center, and they are pushing the Biden administration to just push off this moratorium until it is all clear and people know whether they will get their loans relieved or not. That's all still up in the air. It's up to the Department of Education and the Biden administration. We probably won't know more until December, closer to when that December 31st moratorium is scheduled to lift.
So, bottom line, if you're a student who's got a mountain of debt, you weren't sure how much of it you were still going to have to be on the hook for, sit and wait, I guess. That's the plan.
Yeah, sit and wait. Make sure you stay on top of all of the developments. But for now, we have a legal journey in front of us.
Yeah, the education department saying we'll be sending out updates via email. So get on our listserv, essentially. Cheyenne Hazlitt, thanks a lot for the reporting.
Thank you, Brad.
One of the interesting themes I find recurring in story after story is this theme of culture informing how workplaces operate. Like, if bad behavior is accepted in a workplace, you'll often see more of it. If there's a power imbalance in a workplace, it's more likely people will be exploited. One place where this is particularly problematic is in sports, where we hear time and time again there are often unique power dynamics. You got people working side by side in conditions that might not feel like a professional atmosphere, even though it very much is.
If you go back decades, Nasser was first reported decades ago, and I would have never met him. I should have never met him.
They are catching some of the bad guys now. That has changed. Coaches are mandatory reporters in a way they weren't before. There have been some positive changes, but more needs to be done.
So several years ago, this group was created specifically to deal with issues of harassment and abuse within athletics. It's called SafeSport.
At the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, ending abuse is not just our job. It's our promise.
And we've covered several stories where SafeSport has disciplined people for misconduct or given them what SafeSport calls probation, where you got to let sporting officials know you're being investigated. But what happens when the group in charge of hearing your complaint turns on you for how you shared your story in public? Recently, ABC News partnered with ESPN on an explosive story revealing new allegations about SafeSport itself. ABC's Pete Madden is with our investigative unit. Dan Murphy is with our partners at ESPN. And first of all, guys, this story revolves around not an athlete, but a referee, right? What happened here?
Yeah, that's right. Gray Montrose is a lawyer who refereed rugby matches on the weekends, and just to keep involved in the sport that she loved. She decided about a year and a half ago to report a fellow referee named Joe Burpo, who she says sexually harassed and groped her when they were working together in a tournament.
A lot of this is conditioned on do it for love, do it because you love it, do it because of the development opportunity that it could mean something, that you could use it to go somewhere.
Referees don't get paid very much at all as they're trying to work their way up the ladder and get better assignments. So oftentimes they'll invite their fellow referees to bunk up with them with the night or stay in a spare bedroom to try to save on costs a little bit. So this is what Montrose did.
And I was like, hey, I have a spare bedroom, rather than trying to drive from Charlotte to Virginia Beach on Sunday, that's kind of crazy. So you're welcome to come stay in my spare bedroom.
And Montrose says he took this as far more of a sexual invitation as she ever intended it to be.
There was no consent, absolutely not. I was like, absolutely not. No. He's like, well, are you sure? Are you sure? Come on. It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
And he chased her around the counter in the kitchen and tried to proposition her several times. When she finally said no and got away from him that night, she thought she was free. And as they're driving home from this match that they refereed together in Virginia, she says that Burpo reached across the car and groped her breast.
I freaked out because I was driving 60 miles an hour down the highway. I nearly drove off the road. I was like, what are you doing? He was like, oh, haha. That was funny, wasn't it? And I was like, excuse me?
Burpo then agreed to what is essentially a plea deal with SafeSport as they adjudicate these cases. He admitted to wrongdoing, and he got what's a relatively light punishment of 6 months probation. But during those 6 months, Montrose noticed that Burpo kept on getting really good refereeing assignments. And at one point, he was even elected president of the Regional Referee Society that he oversaw.
What does that tell somebody who's very used to taking advantage of these sort of power dynamics if they know that there are absolutely no consequences?
So Montrose was worried that others in the rugby refereeing community weren't learning enough about what Burpo had done. So she decided to share with some of her colleagues the documents that Burpo actually signed where he admitted wrongdoing.
Nobody asked me if I wanted to keep this confidential. Nobody even asked me, in what way am I bound to this process?
Because of SafeSport's rules, she's now the one facing the prospect of punishment.
Wait, she would be punished? Why would she be punished for this incident? Pete?
So victims are not prohibited from talking about their case, but SafeSport considers its documents confidential, and they guard them pretty closely. Even the people involved in a case lose access to their file after 10 business days. So sharing those documents with third parties is a violation of SafeSport's rules. SafeSport says the policy is designed to protect the privacy of victims and witnesses who have participated in a sensitive investigation. But critics point out that the lack of transparency here also serves to keep the details of any alleged misconduct and the findings of an investigation a secret.
But it's intimidation to say, you need to shut up and you can never share any of this ever again, or I will come after you in your job, your life, everything outside of rugby. Like, I will come after you.
Montrose says she knew the rules, but felt that the policy was blocking her efforts to hold Burpo accountable and warn other people about his behavior because she could not share the documents that proved that Burpo had admitted to wrongdoing. So she decided to break the rules, and then SafeSport launched a new investigation focused instead on her.
Wait, so what happened? SafeSport launches an investigation on her. What does that mean? Like, does she get punished for this? What's the punishment?
So, yeah, not yet, Brad, but she's in the process. So SafeSport has offered her a few different plea deals, similar to what they offered to Burpo. It's what they call an informal resolution.
So you're literally imposing the same level of sanctions on me as the guy that groped me.
Montrose was appalled at the idea that she might have to accept the same punishment as the man who admitted to harassing her for sharing evidence that he admitted to it. So she's since hired an attorney to try to fight back against any of these sanctions.
Man, they're going to come after me for everything they can because I've made enough noise. Like, this is going to end any refereeing career I had left.
Pete and I have covered SafeSport now for a few years, and we've seen several examples of people sort of sharing or leaking these confidential documents. But this is the first time we've ever seen SafeSport try to punish somebody or go against somebody for sharing those documents.
In the meantime, then, because you said, like, she would see this guy around refereeing big, important matches in her world. Like, what's happening to the guy who she accused as this is all playing out?
Well, that's where this story kind of gets even more interesting. So Burpo's right now, his probation is over, and he's in good standing with SafeSport as far as they're concerned.
Really?
Yeah, he's still the president of this referee society that we talked about. However, when Montrose raised those concerns, USA Rugby, the national governing body of the sport in America, passed a new policy that says that anybody who's ever had a SafeSport sanction on their record can't be employed and can't be hired as an independent contractor. So Burpo thought he had agreed to this deal where he wouldn't miss any time on the field at all. But now, as far as USA Rugby is concerned, he can no longer referee some of the sport's biggest matches. So he's now working with an attorney and trying to retract that initial admission of guilt and fight back as well. So it's one of these cases, I think, that it raises a lot of thorny questions about the relationships between SafeSport and the national governing bodies that run these individual sports, and trying to figure out which one of them actually has authority to keep people who have been accused of wrongdoing out of the sports that they oversee.
So SafeSport set up as this organization that can overrule the sports in case the sport isn't strict enough. But now it sounds like SafeSport's being less punishing than the USA Rugby folks. So what does this whole dynamic mean for a group like SafeSport going forward?
So it's a really interesting question, Brad. This case has already caught the attention of leading advocates for abuse victims, most notably the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, which is providing Montrose with some legal resources and financial support as she awaits the outcome of SafeSport's investigation. They very much see her case as in line with other post-Me Too challenges to the way companies have used things like forced confidentiality and workplace harassment matters to conceal longstanding patterns of misconduct by employees. And it puts these two major victim protection organizations, Time's Up and SafeSport, at odds against each other. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. In the meantime, Montrose's lawyer says that SafeSport's pursuit of penalties here could chill future reporting, making others think twice about working with SafeSport if they know they could ultimately end up under the microscope themselves. SafeSport has obviously objected to that contention and is defending its rules, but SafeSport itself could soon face questions about its policies and procedures from people powerful enough to compel them to change. The Senate Commerce Committee has actually commissioned an independent review of the U.S. Olympic movement's efforts to respond to the athlete abuse crisis. And while the scope and timing of that effort remains a little bit unclear, they will almost certainly be taking a good look at SafeSport.
Fascinating reporting. All right. Dan Murphy, Pete Madden, thank you both.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
And one last thing. At some point today, you will live on a planet for the very first time that has 8 billion humans living alongside you. That is the projection from the United Nations, which estimates the global population each year. That's right, I said estimate, so it's not like some kid is going to get named the 8 billionth person and get a plaque. I mean, if you do know a baby born today, maybe it's them. Regardless, this is a clear sign of a few things, some of which are confoundingly contradictory. For one, the Earth has never been so crowded, which might make you think, it's tougher to be alive than ever before, our infrastructure can't support all of us, our population is exploding right as our climate is making it tougher to farm, which is all true. On the other hand, the reason we've got 8 billion people here now is because we as a species have gotten better at maintaining life. Medicines are better, infant mortality rates are lower, and globally, lifespans are almost a decade longer than they were a generation ago. You could argue, despite our crankiness, things here have never been better. That's where we are, but where are we going next? Well, in many ways, the world is following the trends that developed countries have been experiencing for years.
The U.S. Census estimates that 3 million families in America are living doubled up.
We saw a baby boom in the 1950s in the U.S. Well, many nations are seeing their baby booms right now. That means birth rates might decrease in the coming years, which is good for family wealth. It also means that by the year 2050, for the first time, the number of 65-year-olds will equal the number of 12-year-olds on Earth. The number of 5-year-olds will be even smaller than that. Our population will grow older on average. At this rate, it appears that by the year 2080, our population will top out around 10 billion people and then basically flatline. And if you're younger than me, the question you should be asking is, how are we supposed to support all these 100-year-old brads walking around by then? The U.S. says this is the moment to make sure all the folks who will be working age then are being set up for success now. Healthcare, education, good working conditions. You know, the stuff that makes the world more tolerable no matter how crowded we are. I'm not planning on going anywhere, you guys. Like, if the science will let me, I'm sticking around, so be ready. Hey, if you want a new episode every day downloaded straight to your smartphone, what are you doing? Hit that follow button. Make sure you subscribe to start here. I'm Brad Milkey. See you tomorrow.
It's lunchtime in America. So, what are we serving up?
Well,